Okay, we're live. We're 10 minutes, 10 seconds into the thing. Greetings. Hi, I'm Clifford Bates again. And I'm on, like I said in my thing, this is a messing around on a Friday afternoon. It's a live stream this time again. I'm out of Warsaw visiting my mother-in-law. We're in the southwest of Poland, traveling. My throat's a little bit grumpy. I don't know why, but let's do this. So I do it. It's not going to be a long one. I said I'd do it like I normally do it. I plan to do these. I was going to probably try to do a recording, but I decided to get it done. What happened this week so far? I'm traveling. My scholarship stuff. Well, I got a couple things. One is I'm waiting. I have to wait until the start of September. So when some of the American journals open up, I want to send something I've written and had edited, and actually had some research money to edit it. And it came back, and I was going to send it to someplace. But then when I saw it, I said, no, let me go to an American journal. But then I looked at the American journal. I kind of like panicked, and then I sent it to a Polish journal. Because I panicked for American journal because they said, because I submitted to them before, and they rejected it. Because they rejected it because I think how I had the article at the time was a little too narrow in their perspective. And I rewrote it, responding to people, and reworked it. And that's why I sent it to the editor, because of the reworking. But they have that rule, and I said, well, but they didn't really send it out. I mean, I thought about it. First, I panicked. I sent it to the Polish journal, and the Polish journal said, I sent it back to me saying, oh, it's too long. And I go, what do you mean too long? They said, oh, what do you only have with this so many characters, and you're over the character count. And I go, where was that on the instructions? It wasn't. It was on a different site. It was on a different site, and I got kind of annoyed. I said, gee, why am I bothering sending something to like this place that they're going to be doing? I was kind of pissed off. I might have said that to you already. There was one or two journals I could have sent it to, but I don't. There's one or two journals I probably would send it to if I didn't have it. Polish journals I could send it to, and it, relatively. But I said and then I thought about I'm going to send it to the American I'm going to send it to one or two American journals and see what happens. I will send it there, see what happens, see if they will get rejected. So I have to wait until September, the beginning of September, before I can send it to the journal I was thinking about sending it to. And we'll see what happens. I'm kind of like crossing my fingers. Maybe this time the change of title, the structure of what happened, and that some of the things that might have been turning them off from it originally are gone. So that goes out. I have another thing about my research thing I've done is something I gave to someone at Modern Age. The editor said that, but I was there for a year and I haven't heard anything. And I asked him, what's going on? And it's always every backlog. A year backlog is just too ridiculous long. That's just not fair to people. They need to say, yes, I'm going to accept it, or not, I'm going to accept it. You have to do that. This is what good editorial management is. But Modern Age has ceased being a kind of serious scholarly. I mean, it has good articles and good things like this, but it's more like, it used to be more academic, more kind of serious scholarship. Like it wasn't really a full academic journal, but it was a place where now it's kind of becoming increasingly more journalistic in that sense. And now Dan McCarthy sees this, will get mad at me for saying this, but I think Dan's a good guy and he should be an editor. But editing Modern Age, Peter Lawler would have been the perfect manager for it. And I still think maybe they should ask Dan Mahoney to take it over. Bring someone with a PhD and an academic background who can bring ISI back to the way it was intended to be, not this wannabe TPUSA nonsense. I understand the current director of ISI has a very specific agenda. He's a good guy. He's a very smart guy. He's embraced certain kind of good. He understands the dynamic of what's going on the right today, unlike a lot of people in the conservative movement. But at the same time, it's still more activist oriented, and I think this is a mistake on the part of ISI. ISI should be the building ground of where the future scholars of the conservative movement is built. In a similar way, what's happening with the Institute of Humane Studies does with the classical liberals. Institute of Humane Studies has been doing a far, far better job for 20 years on building young scholars and young things than ISI. ISI has dropped the ball really on this. Yes, it has some scholarship, but most of their stuff seems to be aiming at activists, and that's the wrong group. Okay, yes, we need activists. Yes, we need activists. But we also need to be the future teachers and the future people that will create activists. Oh, but we don't trust the academy anymore, kind of nonsense. Well, that's just slitting your own throat. I mean, okay, yes, the conservatives will have a hard time reading someone's book is far more influential on a deep level vis-a-vis activism and mass propaganda. Well, but again, the problem here is mass propaganda really the purpose of conservative scholarship? I think this is the problem. I think if we understand it as a mass movement, then we're just as bad as the enemy in that sense. I'm not here to be a propaganda agent. I'm not here to do this. I'm dedicated to truth. As a scientist and a scholar, we should be always dedicated to truth. Yeah, that makes us kind of vulnerable to those who aren't. But we should be fighting for the university to purge the ideologues from the university completely. In fact, I have no problem with state officials removing much of our left-wing colleagues. But I would also agree that a scholar who is kind of like only doing kind of right-wing propaganda has no place in the university either. So, this is not, and this is the problem, is that we have destroyed scholarship to the degree that the only thing we do is kind of can be argued as propaganda, one side or another. So therefore, it becomes the view that all of a sudden anything done by the right is not real scholarship, and anything done no matter how crappy or moronic done by the left, oh, that's a breaking new ground scholarship. Okay, this is the problem here. And I think this frustrates a lot of young scholars in the sense. But I don't think we should give up. We shouldn't give the university up to them that way. Maybe we need state help to take the money away from the left. And, you kill the money, you kill the people. Once you make it, the universities have no money, no sources, that therefore and most academics are cowards in that sense. They're there. Most of the academics I know among the left are there because they're just trend followers, and they like their comfort, and they're comfortably. They're hypocrites for the most part. There's bourgeois, and they live the most comfortable lifestyle. That wonderful scene in one of the seasons of what is that? Come on! That series on television about the Minnesota farm. It's driving me crazy now. The name is going to drive me. Yellowstone, where Beth Dutton is at a bar, and this all of a sudden academic guy kind of hits on her, and she just destroys him. Beautiful destroying. That's most of what the academics' culture are these basically wannabe bourgeois types who portray to be these real people of the masses, but are nothing but self-serving things. Okay. Back to my diatribe, my scholarship. So I have a piece, so that goes out there. That's being done. I have another piece, therefore, I did it for Modern Age. That I kind of did it on using Aristotle's politics discussion of micro changes that lead to real structural change. I looked at the American regime from the 1930s, not 1930s, but 1960s, looked at four pieces of what we call two pieces of court, two court rulings, and two pieces of congressional legislation that fundamentally altered the structure of the states by the population and things like this. And what I tried to arguing here is that using the idea of small micro changes, this was a real revolutionary change. You want to understand why the revolution, why the American regime changed the way it did in the past 40, 50 years, is not because of what the left did per se, it's not the progressive movement or the administrative state. They are aspects of it. But what really did it was the fundamental alteration of the body politic at the state and the state level. And that fundamentally altered it. And that was done through legislation and court rulings about the population and who's coming into the country, stripping the states the power to structure their legislatures to ensure that there was that the rural and the urban vote would not the urban immigrant vote would not overly control and dominate the legislature, and therefore spreading out the population and spreading out the legislative things. So that requires, like the Constitution requires, the spreading out of the Senate being equal and the House being this way, forces a kind of balancing act that the founders entitled. They just didn't want majority government. And this is what I was arguing in that paper, and it's a good paper in that sense. I just need to change it a little bit and make it a little more academic for another journal, but I will go do that. That's that paper. The next paper is that I've done is I have a okay. This has to do with my reading. I read Dan Mahoney's American Mind, had a very good article that I then kind of reacted against. But I think it was. I love Dan Mahoney, and I are close, not close, but we're friends. We know each other now for over 20 years. I met him in 1991 at the Midwest conference at the Palmer House, Chicago. I was there coming from Northern Illinois. I was a nice doctoral student there. And I attended a panel, and then I saw him at the book fair. He just got his book just published on Rem and Neurone, and he was shocked to find out someone else, because most of the young students of Strauss or the Straussian crowd didn't even know who Neurone was. I knew Neurone very well. I studied him as an undergraduate. I knew who Neurone was. I even know other things. And we all of a sudden started competing and talking, and like we were talking, and like we knew each other. We knew the different people, the sources that he kind of interested him and shaped him, or things that I've read. And I knew well. So Dan and I always got along. In fact, one time when I was stuck at a conference, my ride left me. Actually, I was living in Northern Illinois, and we went there by car. And the people I was stuck with, I was talking with people there, and all of a sudden my ride left me without telling me, and I was stuck there, and I was going to be okay. What's going on? And he arranged to get me a little room at the hotel, which was basically was not even a real room. It was just a part of a thing that they did, and they just put a bed there, and I got something, like he paid for that. And I tried getting him a French wine when I was in the early 2004, 2000. In fact, this is one of the things I missed him. And I saw Peter Lawler, a mutual friend of ours, and I gave Peter the French champagne that I got for Dan. But I couldn't see Dan. Dan was not there. Dan was there, but Peter was there, and Peter got it. So I always feel like I owe Dan a nice bottle or something. I've always argued that it's too bad we don't get a chance to bump into each other that much at all. We just kind of email and talk to each other. And I don't even, it's very hard to even talk to him. So Dan is a person I respect, and I was kind of put off by I was confused by the American Mind piece of populism, rightly understood, because it really didn't address didn't try to even defend populism in any sense. It was kind of like more about, I call it things. So I kind of wrote a response, and I wrote it. Now, American Mind passed on it because they think they don't do a one-off response piece. I think it would have been good. I sent it now to First Things, but I get a feeling they're not even going to respond to it. I'm going to be like kind of annoying. I'm waiting for the American Greatness crowd, who I used to write for. The editors changed, the new editors. I sent a request. Who do I send this to? I'm going to email somebody about this. I mean, who is now the editor? Who's running that? And you have their email. I'm going to say, I know Julie. Julie's probably mad. Julie and Ben kind of left them, and they don't want to do anything mad to them. They're not poisoning the well or anything, but there's kind of, okay, the good there. He left. They did all the work, and the current editor and owner of it took all the credit. Now, so that was my reading. My reading thing. That one thing I read. What else this week? I've been reading The Frogs, and I've been reading Aristophanes' The Birds. Again, I'm starting The Birds next week. But this tomorrow I'll be doing a group on finishing The Frogs up, and I've been rereading The Frogs. It was from my last video. I'm waiting on something. I'll talk about this when I talk about Vlad Vlexer, yeah. Because I think that's something I kind of ran into and he's got me interested in looking at something about Gogol, which I read as an undergraduate in my Russian literature course. I took a lot of Russian literature course, and I'm actually interested in doing something with that, and that's the thing I'm going to talk about there. But what about my the articles in that sense? My articles, ABC. We got school coming up, and I need to finish. I have a thing I might do for someone I do. I have a thing I can write about on sports that I might write for a journal I know, an online journal I know. I'll send it to them and see what they think. But okay, that's my work. Okay, now the other reading is I said my readings, and now I'm going to do my videos. My videos, why I finished. Like those of you who watch videos this week saw the ending of both the Montesquieu, and I'm sorry, the last ending of the Montesquieu ones were like long. I even thought it was going to be much longer than it turned out. The last Montesquieu, I thought it was going to be as bad as the 4.5 hour, that big super God. I was like crying at that one. Because how I did it, but I finished it. It was done. And I also finished the Schmidt. I just announced I'm doing another Schmidt. It'll be a break. You'll have a couple weeks of anything. In fact, I'm going to be just doing video upon video next week, and the week after, you'll have a series of videos until the beginning of the new month, until the September. You will have basically until September 1st. You will be having videos basically 4 days a week on my thing on looking at I think I am actually doing basic political science research. I'm going to be doing a thing on basic political science research. I broke up the Van Ever readings into smaller things. I broke it up into smaller, but even those are things a lot. And I broke up the Van Ever reading on basic political science methodology to break up certain things and to do it and cover it the way that I did, so it'd be like a good introduction. And I thought they were good videos. I think I did a good job doing that. I basically got 2 weeks and did all the things I needed to cover, including the last video I gave a bonus. I was only going to deal with part of the thing on dissertations. I even did writing the dissertation. So I did an extra bonus thing that I didn't plan on doing. But then on the first, I did something unique. I started 2 things. I started my finishing. I'm going to be the week out, because really it goes on to the I think the Van Ever thing goes like for 2 more seasons, 1 or 2 more things on that. But then I basically I broke up. I did Plato's Republic, book 1, and I broke it up into what I say 6 discourses, the 6 bits of what happens in Plato's Republic 1. And I made 6 videos, but there was a problem in the first video. It ended too quickly. Something happened. I got an interruption. I maybe it wasn't the first video. Maybe it was the second video. I don't know. I forget what video it was. I got interrupted in it, And in getting interrupted in it, what happened was it was very frustrating, because what happened was I thought I started recording and doing something again, but apparently I didn't. And I wrapped it up, and then I hit the end button thinking I hit the end button, but I know I was replaying. And I noticed, well, why isn't the screen popping up? And I realized, and then I hit the thing and looked at it, and then I did the next thing, and I said, okay, this is going to be a much shorter. The next part is going to be much shorter. So why don't I just do both these together, so that on the same day, they're going to be released at the same day. But then introduce it. They start out with, "Oh, you liked it, like it. Go back there and like it, like it." I didn't do my spiel that I did. Like now, I'll do my spiel now, and I'll end it with the other part. Like you've said, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. This is a thing that you do. You get others to do that, grow that, right? This is, if you liked it so far, like it. I see one person liking it. We're going on and off here, so we'll see what happens. The other thing about this today, the video. So therefore, I'll be doing Plato's Republic until the end of for that first week of September. It's done like this. It's going to be, they're finishing up. You get two sets of videos. We'll get the first of the finishing up of the basic political science methods video series, because I did them all to lump. I didn't want to break them up like I've been doing other things. And then I recorded started the recording. I did the recordings for two things. We're starting Rousseau's, and the Rousseau is going to be not by book, but by book in a couple chapters. I tried dividing the chapters into reasonable equal lengths. Unlike, I decided to break the chapters up. Unlike what I didn't do in the Montesquieu thing, to avoid this, because otherwise we only have 4 videos and big and they'll be long. So I decided to break things up, but some things are longer than others. So I made the first video, and it's about an hour, so that's not that bad, I think, if I remember correctly. And then I actually made the second video. I did the first 2 videos of the Rousseau, and that's going to be on Monday, Wednesdays, like the Montesquieu. And then I'm going to be doing Schmidt's, what Schmidt? Okay, what Schmidt? I'm going to say it right now. It's going to be his parliamentary book. I'm going to be doing parliamentary first, and then I will probably do dictatorship. That's my schedule, Schmidt. I have to now think about how I made the first recording. It was much longer. We talked about the preface, and that's going to be right after September. So that's going to be the foreground of what we're going to be doing on the videos, in that sense. I have a break now because of my trip. I probably won't make a video. I won't do a recorded video for that here. So therefore, you're going to be seeing the backlog of it. So that's my recording thing, so that you understand that. Now we're at 20 minutes. So now let's talk about my topics of this. And I really have a problem here, because I want to go look what I said. I wrote down my notes. Well, it's going to be the themes of what I did on. Let's go do Axler. I'm going to talk about the Dan Mahoney piece a little more. I wrote that big piece on Dan about the question of populism, but I don't really want to talk about that. That's going to be doing it. I want to talk about Alex, Vlad. Vlad Vlexer. I ran into his YouTube stream sometime this week. And I found it interesting. Someone said I might like it. I thought it, and I watched it. And he is a Russian immigrant, lives in London. I think he's an academic who is, or at least tried. He's writing a book. Yeah, he's a liberal. He's a Russian liberal on the left. He's a man of the left, but liberal on the left, not a radical. He's very much interested in a Russian, right? Isaiah Berlin, okay, the Jewish. German, no, but who wrote a lot of stuff about the Russian writers and Russian reactionaries and things like this, anti-Haeckel and that stuff. What can I say about Axel? He's an Isaiah Berlin guy, and he's really and his stuff on Russia, particularly on the outbreak of the war, about the rationale for it and why the liberals don't understand it. And his real good piece where he really went after what he calls the Chomsky and the left on their review of why Chomsky and the left really misunderstand and why Putin has kind of conned them, is actually a very balanced and very good piece. It's not the typical neocon, neoliberal, well, I mean, that, what the neocon neoliberals do regarding Putin is kind of, it doesn't take him seriously. It makes the argument kind of serious, and it makes things. It doesn't actually explain. It just accuses everyone's being brainwashed by him, but not explaining how. Really, they don't get. They don't. They just makes the claim without the logic or the explanation of how it happens. And that's a bad argument. This is why it's not convincing. It's just the accusation without a good explanation, and that with evidence supporting the explanation. And I think Vlexer does a fantastic job of showing the fault lines and problematic positions of this, and how much of their own critique, in other words, their acceptance, in other words, their blindness and hostility, like the traditional left or the traditional hardcore old leftists. Is that it was to their American-centric characteristic of seeing America as the blame for everything, and that American power and foreign policy, imperialism is the real blame to these things. And you can argue that's the same critique that many on the alt-right have with the neocons, is that they overstate, they don't understand that that Putin, they see Putin's critique of American activity and they think, oh no, he's one of us. But no, it's not. It's more complicated than that. I think this is why I think Vlexer's critique of how the left get bamboozled by both what he calls the traditional old left, the hard left, and the radical left, in essence, the left who critiques American power and the position of American power. And what he calls is the so-called alt left, which is the new left who is kind of joined with the conservatives again on the social issues, like Tulsi Gabbard, the former journal who was at Tbilisi, Greenwald, and these guys, this alt left. And I think, and you can see that alt left also with RFK, right? And how they have adopted the same kind of but different reasons. They have adopted the anti-Ukrainian position for different reasons, and and arguing for the legitimacy of the Russian argument that the Americans are to blame for what this is. This is all America's fault. I think Vlexer did a good job explaining why that's. When his recent video about that is outstanding. I think it's something people those of us on the right need to look at and see, maybe are we being, maybe some of our side is okay. Let's avoid this Russian collusion nonsense. I'm not going to say that we're involved in a conspiracy on the alt-right and American people like this, and MAGA is kind of is a Russian controlled opposition. Like this is the Democratic lie of the past 4 years. And I think this is why some of their position on this is out of naivety, not understanding of what happened. It's ignorance of what's going on in Ukraine. It's ignorance of what Russia is and what Russian power is. I like Tucker, but he's just wrong about this incident because he's mostly uninformed. Honest. Oh, but how do you say that? He listens to the wrong. Like Colonel McGregor is completely laughable on this thing. I used to like McGregor for some of his comments, but when he starts doing stuff, talking about stuff like on this, it just realizes that he's the man who helped with the war plans on Iraq. No, wasn't there at the he wasn't there, but he was before that, and he planned the plans that made the plans to do the invasion. And in many ways, he did not, if he really objected to those things, why didn't he object earlier? Oh, but he was trying to save his career. He was always a person out of favor, and that's why he left his career when he did. I'm not going to say that people say, oh, you're just being mean to him and you don't like him because you disagree with him. No, I just don't. I find that he's been wrong for so long. And when someone has been so wrong over the predictions, you have to say, well, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Okay. I mean, that's just honesty. This is the thing that, this is what led Charles Murray to see the fallacy of liberal social policy. This is what led honesty and being true to what the data says is what led Thomas Sowell to abandon his Marxism, right? I mean, this is the whole point of what science and scientific rigor teaches us that we have to do. And what I don't like about a lot of this is that people who should be more committed, and I don't admit that they don't know stuff enough, but making dogmatic positions. I mean, this is my problem. I'll get in trouble by saying this for people because I know a lot of people, my people, friends like that, will say, "Oh, you're just being you're just a Biden guy." No, I'm not. You bought into the Soros neoliberal bullshit. No, anyone who knows me know that's laughable. Why am I so? Russia is not a friend of traditionalism. Putin the Putin regime is not a nation state. Anyone who believes in the nation state, the belief that nation states and nation structures should have the basis of this, Russia is not a nation state. It is an empire. It's always been an imperial ambition, and therefore, this is why I really got into the look of why this was important in that sense. And Michael, I know Michael Milliman. I respect him. He does translations of Dugin. He has his whole class. I've said I've respected, but this is where he and I have a problem. I can't really take Dugin as a philosopher seriously, and that is because Dugin as a philosopher is too metaphysical, not metaphysical, mystical. I'm using the term by Eric Vogelin, Gnostic in this sense, where there's almost a Gnostic logic to his thing. And I look at him, I can't read, I have a hardest time reading, even when there's a good translation of, and I think Milliman has done outstanding translations of this. I'm not going to criticize him for this. And I think he has kind of presented his interpretation of Dugin is probably, but to say Dugin is Putin's brain overstates it. And I think the video by Vlad Vlexer about this when Dugin's daughter was killed was a very good video also, showing that Dugin is not that influential. In fact, Putin really doesn't like Dugin that much and fears Dugin because Dugin doesn't think Putin is really a true believer of this Eurasian thing, but only an opportunist, a dangerous opportunist. And where therefore, so there's a legitimate argument that Putin had his daughter killed as a warning, and also to messy the waters. Remember, this is the terror state of Russia. This is why Putin uses murder and thuggery as a mechanism. This is right out of any kind of totalitarian situation. Read Hannah Arendt's classic on this. This is why Hannah Arendt's Origins of Totalitarianism still today is an important book to understand the connection between terror. It's not ideology, it's the ideology tied with terror. And this is why the regime has to survive on this thing. That this is the totalitarian ideology. It's not only based upon a Gnostic ideology that understands the world completely differently, but it also is the willingness to engage in violence and terror as a means to achieve it. And it's instrumental and organizational, even while you're the head of state. Not just terror as when you're out of power, as a symmetrical tool to get to power, but a terror as a continual tool, even while you are in power. It is to use terror as a mechanism to control. And I think this is why Axler does a good job in this. And also Axler's discussion on the videos on about why Russia went into it and his discredit. I've seen other videos discrediting the argument that, there was not Echelon line, the Western NATO expansion. There's been lots of videos that I think they've done a good job on this. So why am I interested in this? I'm interested in the question of, this is something I've been interested in, about the question of what Russian ideology is. And I think Wexler did looking at Gogol's Dead Soul paragraph, offering an ideology, an argument about this tension of the battle. And I think this is Dugin, right? Dugin argues that the West, the neoliberal ideology, neoliberalism is a totalitarian ideology. In one sense, Vogelin would kind of not agree. They wouldn't say it's totalitarian. It is an ideology. It is an ideology and it's a closed ideology, but it's not a totalitarian ideology. And this is the difference. And therefore, Dugin's claim that neoliberalism is totalitarian is an overstatement, because the argument is all closed systems are by definition totalitarian. And it's this idea of progress. The Western fallacy of from Hegel onwards about progress, the inevitability of progress. Okay, that's correct, right? This is. I think this is an error. This assumes that it's historicism. This is what Strauss rightly showed, the connection between the positivists, the early 19th century positivists, and the emergence of what the idea of progress then creates the historical epochs, and that creates this, and then relativism of that. Once you bring relativism to, you have these epochs of development, then you understand each epoch is independent of each other epoch, and then you bring relativism in it, and therefore you get radical historicism, that of Nietzsche, which argues that every epoch cannot understand each other and has to understand it only in terms of its own structure. Now and that was a product of German thinking and German idealism that emerged in the middle and to late of the 19th century. That this German historicism starts on the 1820s, 1830s as a response to Kant. They'll say, but what about Hegel? Hegel's early 1820s. Well, Hegel gives an idealism structure. He understands this. And yes, Fukuyama's piece of and this is Axler's right about this, that Fukuyama's famous piece of 89, which I've talked about before to people on this group, on this my team, is kind of a kind of an accident. He was talking about, in other words, that it was a coincidence that it came out when the wall collapsed. It wasn't intentional. It was in fact, the wall collapsed right. In other words, it was months. It was planned for months to be on that issue, and the next thing happens within the next couple of weeks. The wall collapses. The Berlin Wall comes down. Therefore, in other words, if the Berlin Wall came down, his piece would not have been so prophetic or so powerful. But this is before the age of. Okay, hold on. Let me get this. Hold on for a second. Let me see if I can fix this. Now we have the blue screen. No. Let's see if I can fix this. No. Okay, we're gonna have the blue color. Ooh, you blue. Okay, in my eyes. Hold on, let me try this one more time. Okay, it's the light problem. That's why I don't like using this machine. So his argument was that, and this is, you see this in people like Dostoevsky with this critique of Western liberals. Dostoevsky and Gogol, both of them have this critique of a criticism of this Western myth of progress, and that this is, and the question is Russia European or is it not? And I think Vexler's translation of the Gogol paragraph about this from Dead Souls is interesting. It's thought-provoking about the question of Russia, of what Russia is. What is Russia? This metaphor of Russia as a troika, right? a troika that's underway and it's out of control towards this thing? Is it part of the West and therefore dictated by is it down this path of progress of Western development, of Western ideology, which many historians of the 1840s that he mentions, Hector, that someone championed by Isaiah Berlin criticizes history. History is not that line he uses. History is not a orchestra movement. It's not a organized thing showing meaning. Rather, it's just a series of events that explaining events that happen. It's about context and about things like this. Is not something, and it's something I would even say that someone I'm very respectful of David Starkey kind of would agree with this. Now, it's just going to try one more time. Okay, we see if I'm doing this. Oh, you have to. Sorry, I apologize for the blue of this. I'll hopefully fix this. Voila, this is the big problem of this. This is the idea. And the question is, for Goebbels and the Rush, for Dostoevsky, this open question. This is left as an open thing. It's not a. Yeah, but then there was. Vlexer argues that there is in Russia, and this is what we call the Eurasianist position of Dugin, and also a little bit of what you see as the kind of Tsar Alexander III kind of ideology of that there's an idea, pan-Slavism. This is something that Hannah Arendt rightly addresses in her Origins. Imperialism question of Hannah in Origins, it's totalitarian. Oh, I look blue. The blues are too high here. Okay, this is strange. This is like my ears are blue, man. Oh no! And the pink everywhere, pink, and the blue is here. Oh God, this is great. Okay, I look like a Boolean, right? Let's go right into the point here. That Vlad Vlexer makes a very good argument about this point. And I think this is something that we have. This is why my friend Lee Tapeter, in his book on about 3 or 4 years ago, on my Facebook, I can point to this already. He wrote a very good book. He's someone who's trained by the Voglinians. He wrote a book about Russian traditionalism and Russian the Russian traditionalism as a political symbol. I think the book is okay. It's good. I think it's a good start, but it needs more. This is something that Eric, the Vogelin student, Soundhouse did in his Dostoevsky book. I tried to make this rhyme about the Dostoevsky as a political symbol. The Dostoevsky idea here is as a political symbol of this Russian identity and a Russian idea that is an alternative to the West. And this is the Eurasian, this is the idea of the Eurasia. This is a different idea that is an alternative to the West. And does Putin believe this? I'm not sure. You can say some of the things that Vlexer said, that he has his alternative vision, that he has his own opportunistic vision of this and what he's trying to do. But versus what Dugin is doing, what Dugin is trying to argue this. And Dugin looks at Putin as a block, as a temporary, maybe a means to do it, but that not a kind of obstacle that has to be overcome in order to achieve the full Eurasian idea. And what I think about this is, I think this is a very important question. Now, is Dugin? Can you address this on Dugin's own terms? No, I think his Heideggerianism gets in the way, and it's not faithful Heideggerianism. It's bad, and this is where I'm going to have a fight with Michael Milliman. I think, his translation is fine. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I don't think Dugin is as faithful a student of Heidegger. He adopts Heidegger's metaphors and symbols and language, but then he mixes it with things that are not necessarily fundamentally or compatible, particularly the metaphysics the metaphysical aspect within Russian idea that he was champion, the ontological metaphysical dimension in Dugin is the kind of a in contradiction to what is in Heidegger, and particularly in the fourth political theory, where this idea of the fourth, now as anyone who knows the study of the fourth political theory, as a Christian, I grew up a Christian, Christian fundamentalist. So we, the late great planet Earth, and growing up on reading the Book of Daniel as the kind of the Book of Apologetics, and look at the Book of Daniel. How isn't the Dugin's own metaphor for the fourth political theory not fit into the Daniel 11, book 11 of Daniel, about the four dreams of the four kingdoms, right? All Daniel's prophets of the four empires, the four kingdoms, and then that whole vision of the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south, and the aspects of this kind of ontological. Now, of course, we can argue that Calvin and Augustine argue this happened at Christ's lifetime already, and therefore, okay, we can agree to this. But this is something that is kind of an interesting, that if you want to talk about mysticism, an apocalyptic mysticism of Berdyaevian dimensions, really, if you understand Russian mysticism, the idea of Russian mysticism tied to Russian orthodoxy, that this was Berdyaevian understanding of the Russian idea, embrace this apocalyptic concept of that Rome's. In other words, remember, the idea was Moscow was going to be the third vision of the church, the third Rome, the ultimate Rome in this, and therefore this is what I would say. What about Dugin's understanding here? Now, I'm going to see people saying, "Oh, I'm not really interested in this." I don't blame you. This is a frustrating thing. But what does and I don't want to get into a diatribe about Dugin, because I don't really think I really can understand Dugin, even though I followed Michael's stuff. And I'm going to say I respect him and he does good work on this. But when I read Dugin, I get this, like, doesn't make sense to me. This still doesn't make sense to me. I think his argument that this conflict between the ideology of the neoliberal versus this Eurasian ideology is kind of, I think, not to me. I think this is kind of not justified as ideological. This is not the. It is kind of Hegelian. It is kind of Heidegger, not Heidegger. It's Kojevian understanding that the dialectic has now moved away from the communism versus the totalitarian versus the liberal democracy. Now it's the tension between the Western liberal, progressive neoliberal ideology versus that of what he says as the Eurasian ideology. But then is the Eurasian ideology not? How's that differ from the Chinese? The Chinese are the Chinese part of the Eurasian. I don't think the Chinese will buy that they're Eurasian. I think the Chinese are Han. I think they're the old party that has been Hanized, Hanized, and it's basically using communist power and the power of the Communist Party state for Han nationalistic and the elites of Han to impose their will upon all China and all the region, like the Hermit Kingdom idea that we dominate and control by the center. How is this Eurasian? This is not Eurasian. This is the classic China problem that even Montesquieu addressed. So I think the Eurasian question to me is a very interesting question. What is Russia? What is Russia? Is it going to be this new this idea? Is it this false? I think it's right. It does. Gogol does not create the myth. Is it Dostoevsky? Who creates this destiny of Russia? That is to be what? And in fact, he's right. What is this destiny of Russia? It's not clear what the destiny of Russia is. It is simply that it's a destiny of antithesis. It is simply the antithesis of thesis and antithesis of Western progress. But it doesn't. It is not that it's. This is why many of the what we say the anti-liberal, neoliberal, anti-progressive voices in the West look at Dugin and say, oh, maybe he's a traditionalist. Maybe he's for the nation state. Maybe he is this enemy of globalism in the sense. But no, the problem with Russia is that it's not. It is an empire. And even Dugin's version, it is an empire. Be clear about this. It is an empire, and therefore it is not grounded on the concept of the nation state and the idea of national identity and national self-determination. So, well, I think that is a good place to end this, and this is what I would like to talk about. Maybe I'm going to do some work on this. I'm going to look at it. I bought a couple couple of Google. I'm going to look at that passage. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to go look at it. I'm going to talk to my old friend Michael Kuz, who wrote an article about Dostoevsky, and we could write something about this. I think this is the Russian idea. My good friend George Jahansky, he's a civil servant now, he just wrote a book about that Russia is not a civilized nation. The idea that by how it's behaving, it's no longer it's barbarian in that sense. It's no longer using the idea of that you are a nation of part of civility, that Russia is outside of civility, of Western civility in this regard, that it's no longer part. The idea is that the idea of being a culture, a part of the civilization is part of this Western ideal, and that by rejecting the West, they are rejecting civilization. I have to talk about my friend about this because now he has a family issue because his partner is suffering from maybe having cancer and is panicking about that. But he's writing his article about this, and he sent it to me. I should read it. I just didn't have time, but this is a very important idea that this is, this idea of Russia has been bugging me in that sense. That the question of is the fundamental crisis of this, is it really tied to what is Russia? Is it merely this idea of it being an antithesis to the West in this sense, or is it and I think this is the problem or is it merely just an open question that they have not solved, they have not addressed it? This is something that the Russians have never fully addressed, and this is the tension of Russia. That is it an in-between state? And this is the question. I think you can argue this structurally. This is an in-between state because as long as it is imperial, it is not a normal nation. The Russian Eastern, the Rus in that sense, the Eastern Rus, where Ukrainian Rus have become a nation in that sense, have adopted, and particularly after what happens of the events of 2014 to 2020, they have a national identity, a strong and powerful national identity, that it is a nation in that sense, with a people that has a civic identity that is not purely reducible to ethnicity. It has ethnic dimensions to it, but it is not simply ethnically divided, because there's the ethnic Russians and Jews and Tatars are now part of this state, and that is a nation, a civic nation in this aspect of it and its identity. And I think that is something that people need to understand. And I think this is where I should stop off. What else did I want to talk about? I was going to talk about maybe my Dan article, my response. We'll see what happens with that. I don't know what to talk about. This is early enough. We're at the 50-minute mark. Maybe I should stop it. Not many people are here. Maybe not much interest in this. We have the camera problem. So, well, therefore, let's do it this way. I will see you guys later. I'm going to call it early. I'll let you guys go, and hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, like it, share it. Like it, please hit the like button. Help me grow it some more, get more attention. Sometimes these things get more video hits than some of my videos. I'm surprised about this. Another thing is that if you want comments or things, topics, people have not sent me questions on topics or things that they want me to talk about during these things. If you do that on the question section, I will take a note of it and do something on it. Maybe I do owe someone a thing on what was his name on the Manager Revolution, James Burnham. But I have a problem with this. Every time I do this, I see other people's stuff, and I kind of like, oh, that's good. And then I get too deep. I got a big criticism recently, and they said, why don't you should do scripts? And I say, scripts, my reading stuff. They said, because they were cutting me out my Aristotle thing. I said, you should have a script. I said, I'm reading the text of the thing. How can I do a script that's having a commentary? I'm reacting to the book. I'm reading the thing, reading it out, showing the things I know and what I don't know, and trying to react to the text, and that should point out things. This is the kind of style of reading things. So I understand that it's good criticisms, right? Because I stutter and I things like this, and therefore I understand why people want that, because it is a difficult video to do in that sense. But it's the problem with the style I'm doing, and I think I'm not scripting it. I don't have the technique or the editing thing to do scripted videos. I'm sorry, I have no patience. I'm lazy. Second is that I don't think there's too many people who do that stuff. I'm not news to counter. I'm not doing this. I'm more talking about as a teacher in that sense. I'm doing it as how I would tell you, my student, you're in front of me in a tutorial, how I would respond to you in that sense, as a peer and as someone who's there. And so therefore, that's the criticism there. But more comments, more things like this you put here, the more I can do stuff and do stuff that maybe you're interested in. I responded to the so-called neocon thing. I did big video, and then I did an extra respond, adding some more to it. I'll do more of that if you want something on things like this. So therefore, themes, send me themes and questions, and I will do it. So again, if you like it, share it, comments, please put on the thing there. I'll see them and do them. I'll respond to them. I'll do them in that sense. If you have not liked it, put your criticism down, and I will, maybe learn from that in that sense. Another thing, of course, you can say, I hated the blue camera thing. Okay, I understand this. This is probably because there's no light. I think the light changed. It went darker. The light went like this, and now the ambient light is not powerful enough, and therefore this camera is like, doing this. It's frustrating. Another aspect is subscribe, grow it up some more. Our channel, get on things. You get notifications of this and notifications of things like this, of the postings I do and things like that. Another thing is you want to help me do what I do, you want to sponsor it and do it, you can check the links below for Subscribe Star and Patreon, or you can buy one of my books, links below through Amazon or something like this. I'd prefer you buy my Aristotle's Aristotle's notebook on Aristotle's politics. Please buy it by Lulu. It will get me the profit that Amazon gets. But and other ways, find other ways to send me a sponsorship. Please, it would help life out. Life is very expensive now. Sure, everyone knows. Now, another thing is you can follow me on social media. Social media links, my academic links are below, and that's it. We're talking about it. Have a good time. I'll see you next week. Hopefully I will do something on that. There won't be a lot messing around on a Friday for the first, because I posted 2 videos. I think both of them are going to be about Plato's Republic. So you should have a double dose of Plato on that first day on September 1st. September 1st, I have an appointment. I have to be at school. Friday, that's Scott, I have to be at the university because the students are doing something, and I have to having their makeup test on something, American research methods, which I did the videos on. So therefore, I have to be there for that, and maybe not necessarily be there, but pick up the thing. So therefore, that's why there won't be a thing for the first. I might even do a video saying, sorry about that, I'm not going to have it. Okay, maybe I should do a warning video. Well, but that's it. Well, take care. Have a good weekend and have fun. Good day. Take care. Bye-bye.